Hi everyone, and let's discuss architect communications. To begin with, let me introduce myself real quick. My name is Roman Gorbatov. I am a principal architect at Customer Times. I have more than 10 years of overall Salesforce experience and more than 20 projects completed on the architect positions, including some large and very large projects. I'm 18 times Salesforce certified. I'm on CTA track now, and I'm happy to share my knowledge around architect communications. Speaking about the agenda, what we'll discuss today? We'll try to answer several W questions, why the reasons for the communications occurring and being so important in our world, with whom the targets for different communications, when certain communications actually occur, what are the circumstances, the scenarios, and how to act, certain tips and tricks for different circumstances, for different targets, for different reasons. So let's kick it off. And the first question is why? Why communication means a lot? Why is it so crucial? First, much or even most of the time spent by an architect on the project is dedicated to communications of different kind, be it meetings, be it emails, IM, it can be literally anything, but it takes most of your time. So you have to be brilliant in it. Solutions that are the key artifact of an architect are really often created during the communication, during the meetings, during some IMs, while you write emails, at any point of time. Communications is really almost the only way to share the information, to share your vision, and to get information. Though there are documents, there are materials, it's very hard to explain them without proper communication. And hence, failures in communication can be really crucial for the project. You can build the wrong things, you can even not build anything because the stakeholders won't be happy with what they see. So you have to understand and to structure your communications to make them better. And as an additional kind of demonstration to my words, I have added here the picture from Salesforce.com architect role description page, saying that communication is the most important general skill that is been sought for architects of any kind in Salesforce world. So, with whom will you communicate? You know, it's a bunch of people, bunch of different people, and in order to bring some system, I tried to segment them into several groups, which are external, technical, and non-technical. And by external, I mean looking from SI, system integrator, architect position. External means on the customer side or on the partner side. Internal means someone from your own company. And they can be also technical and non-technical. Let's talk in more details about these groups and roles within these groups. First, let's start with external non-technical folks. Their focus is on the goals, features, and results. What to do, when to do certain things. And different roles of this segment of this group include business stakeholders. These are actual owners of the solution who will benefit from it, who will get the results, who will really make their business better once your solution is implemented. Budget owners, people who own a budget and who actually decide whether to spend or not to spend certain amount of money and hence efforts on certain things. Product managers, key responsible people for product or project features and the roadmap from the high level. And on the lower level, we have product owners and business analysts that are responsible for detailed business requirements, functional requirements, and overall solution compliance to these requirements. As well, there may be UI UX designers and managers who are responsible for the design requirements for the solution. There may be external SMEs, certain subject matter experts in different business areas or key users for specific groups, for specific customers' positions. And external project management, PMs, delivery leads, Scrum Masters, everyone who is really responsible from the customer side for the smooth delivery. Their focus is on the risks, plans, issues, everything project related, not really requirements related. And as well, I have listed here separately Salesforce non-technical folks, Salesforce account executives. They are important, and it is important to mention them because they can really affect the solution and different decisions throughout the project. Being a part of these three sides of customer, vendor, and system integrator. Now let's talk about more technical external targets. Their focus is more on the solution and technical landscape, how things should be working, and how to keep it all aligned with the overall enterprise architecture. And these folks may include external architecture experts focusing on Salesforce with some deep Salesforce domain knowledge. Developers, Salesforce developers from external sites, people doing actual coding or configuration in Salesforce, but not part of your zone of responsibility and your team. External enterprise architecture groups, meaning enterprise or integration architects that are focused more on the overall integration landscape and system connectivity or other systems, but they may be not this proficient in Salesforce and Salesforce platform capabilities. And external non-Salesforce developers who are actually doing coding or configurations in the systems outside of Salesforce. And also technical targets, external technical targets include folks from Salesforce, like Salesforce architects who may be overseeing the implementation or assessing the implementation, and Salesforce support in case you have issues with the platform and you need to resolve them in some timely manner and you have to go to Salesforce for help. There are more, I would call them, around technical folks, around technical communication targets that are kind of technical, but more focused on supporting the delivery, and they're here to help really. And they may be external or internal. First group is release managers or DevOps engineers. They are responsible for smooth environment and delivery pipeline management. Branches, sandboxes, deployments, releases, these are all very important stuff for almost any project, and they have to deal with it on a daily basis. Second group is quality assurance, and we can split them into several subgroups here. First are regular QAs, managers and testers who are responsible for the scenarios themselves, for the execution, for coverage of the requirements with the scenarios. A second group is automated QAs, and they are more like developers building automated scenarios and making sure they're executed. And third group is more focused on high volume performance and scalability scenarios, so that your system is really bulletproof. All these groups have their specifics, especially automated and performance testers. They are more like on the developer side, building these tests like separate pieces of code or configuration, and they are deeply integrated with release management and DevOps in order to ensure smooth delivery and smooth testing process. Another group is support or managed services. It comes into play when you have an ongoing project, when it's already kicked off or about to kick off, and they're responsible for product operations, production defects, any validated code, promotions, etc. So you have to deal with them, you have to explain to them how system works and how to deal with any issues and so on. There are also training teams that make sure that the users or super users get proper training, and there are technical writers that are responsible for the project documentation. Speaking about internal communication targets, this is your team, these are your colleagues, and you have some control over them, at least some of them, and you share responsibility over the result with them. Speaking about non-technical internal people, they are internal leadership, account managers or directors. They're responsible for overall project success and partnership extension. They are usually very high level and they don't want to get into deep details. They want the result, they want everything to go smooth and fine and the customer to be happy. Also, we have sales teams, sales and account managers responsible for business growth, for new opportunities. Their focus is to sell more, to make customers happy, and communication with them has its specifics. And probably the most extensive group in terms of communication is internal project management office, PMs, delivery leads, scrum masters, who are responsible for smooth delivery of a given project. They focus on the planning, internal risks and issues, and timelines, external reporting. So these are the folks you will have to deal with on daily basis, every day, and multiple times a day normally. There are also internal technical folks, and that's where you have your control really. And it includes internal dev leads and architects who share the responsibility with you on the technical design and the overall architecture. Internal developers who are doing actual coding and configuration. Internal non-Salesforce developers who are doing some development and configuration outside of Salesforce. For example, MuleSoft or BI, or building the mobile app, supporting your solution, and so on and so forth. And there are also enterprise or integration architects that are focused on connecting to other systems and have experience and expertise in APIs, service buses, other systems, etc. And some industrial or technical SMEs, experts in certain areas, and it may be both functional or industrial areas. For example, you have your company may have healthcare or financial SMEs who can support you with certain processes for given customers, or technical experts, for example, super experts in Salesforce communities, or identity that can help you with certain solutions. These are the people that are normally not part of the given project, but are happy to help and support you, and their experience is your company's experience that you can bring into a given project. So, the key takeaways for the communication targets are the following. First, know your targets. Know with whom are you talking to, remember names, remember positions, and track responsibilities. Know what certain people are responsible for. Remember that what I have just shared is just a framework, and the roles can be combined, can be split, or can be shared. And the actual matrix of responsibilities and roles on a given project is always unique. Second, know the hierarchy, especially when talking about external folks, your customers. You should know who reports to whom and what is the decision-making process, so that you don't waste your time speaking to anyone who does not affect the actual decisions, and it may be just a waste of time. And third, be up to date. Capture changes, capture promotions, vacancies, know when people switch responsibilities, when they are available or not available. This will save a lot of time for you in the future. Okay, moving on to when and how. When communication occurs, what are the communication circumstances, and what are the specifics of those circumstances? First, let's discuss more or less typical circumstances, typical project phases of typical project. Of course, every project is very unique, and it's pretty hard to define some very generic process here, but we'll try. And let's start with pre-sale phase. It happens when the project is not yet even confirmed, and the goal is for the architect to get as much information as possible to provide vision and estimate. The mood for these communications is usually enthusiastic, but it can be suspicious. It always depends on the circumstances. It always depends on the politics, whether there are multiple companies playing in the RFP and one of them is pre-selected and the others are just side players, or you have there may be some bad reputation for certain solutions, or if you start to propose the solutions that are different from what they initially thought, the mood can be suspicious, so be ready for it. And the specifics here is that there are no clear details, there are just plans normally, and you have to make a lot of assumptions. Going forward to initial design communications that normally occur at so-called design phases, or it may be called like sprint zero, something like that. The goal here is to get as much as possible from the requirements to provide the solution design, and to define core processes, including project management and DevOps, to create, as well as creating a backlog of requirements. The mood here is normally enthusiastic and sometimes very optimistic, even over-optimistic. So that during the communications you overestimate what will happen and how the project will go forward. Here the specifics is that you need to catch and align on all the risks, and everything that is impossible take away immediately, because if certain things are either possible or not and there are doubts, and then they go away, you can waste a lot of time. So the more impossible stuff you take away at the design phase with your communications, the better. The next is in-depth communications that occur during the development. The goal here is to keep generating clear requirements and detailed architecture. And the mood, this is normally the largest phase, and the mood here will be pretty routine with ups and downs. And the only thing I highlighted here is you need clear risk management for anything that will show up. And the last phase, at least in this list here, is finalized kickoff stage, when the core development is complete. And the goal of these communications is to explain as much as possible from what has been done. The mood can be nervous and stressed here, especially when you're tough on the timelines, so you need to be ready for it. And though your work as an architect to design solutions is often kind of done at this point, you still need to communicate, and that's why you can be nervous and stressed. So you need some clear structure for your communications to keep it on track, and you need to keep actively participating so that the goals are completed and the project is successful. Let's talk about some more specific scenarios and circumstances that can show up at different phases of the project and even outside the project. Integration communications that can happen before the development or during the development, and the goal here is to define clear and doable integration architecture. The mood will be a routine with ups and downs, but can be pretty nervous with the delays. And the specifics is integration communications are often very slow in all directions. So my key advice here will be more meetings and kind of war rooms where you don't get out till you get the result. Emails for integration communications usually cause significant delays, and project-wise integrations are often underestimated and cause overall project delays. Stakeholder or demo communications. They can happen almost any time ad hoc when your budget owners, when your stakeholders want to see what's going on, and the goal is to align your vision with business, with stakeholders. The mood here can be quite different. Can be pleased and optimistic, can be realistic, can be nervous. And my key advice will be to be very careful and very well prepared, to know with whom you are talking to, and not to talk much, to be very precise in what you're explaining and what you are demoing. Because if you have any problems, it can cause further waste of time, building more presentations, having more meetings, and so on and so forth. Reviews. Reviews is something more technical rather than stakeholder communications as well. They can happen at any time, normally closer to the completion of development or after the development is done, and they are more technical to build more exposure in the details. The mood here also can be different depending on how the project is going, but comparing with stakeholder demo communications, reviews are normally more professional and much slower, where you have time to prepare, to explain yourself, to come up with examples and documents, to go deep into certain configurations and even code, and so on. Here again, you have to be very prepared, and what is necessary for this kind of communications is to bring the right team members, because though as an architect you are hopefully the most knowledgeable person, you can't know everything. You can't be knowledgeable about every single line of code unless you have reviewed everything and ready to talk about every single piece. You better bring the experts for given areas for certain reviews. And the last scenario here is assessment. This is kind of an opposite review scenario. That's where you are conducting a review of some solution. Again, they can happen ad hoc, and normally they happen before some development or even instead of some development, when you do the assessment and figure out that you won't go into this project, for example. and the goal here is for you to understand all technical details, decisions, solutions, and define all the risks that may follow if you start dealing with these technical solutions. The mood is normally very professional, and here the main tip will be get all you need, taking the judgments away. Though you may see a lot of strange solutions, suboptimal solutions, understand that there is always history behind them. And try to be objective, try to get the real details without trying to understand why, or trying to understand why, but this is not your main goal. Primarily, you need to understand what's going on. So, speaking about the key takeaways for the circumstances. Understand the circumstances for each communication and be ready for switches. Think forward, building bridges in advance. For example, if you see that next several sprints you will have to work on some integration, start talking to integration partners in advance, introduce yourself, have a couple of one-on-ones to make familiar. And again, when project phase is about to switch, also be ready for it. Be aware that, for example, you may have to start talking with managed services because the kickoff is about to come, or you need to start talking to QAs. So think forward, weeks forward, maybe a month forward. This will help a lot. Understanding the mood of certain scenarios, try to reduce the mood impact. And pay more attention to some specific scenarios because they may have new audience, new topics, so to feel confident, you have to be more prepared. Now let's speak about in-depth communications. This is something that will take most of the time for almost every architect. So let's discuss the specifics here. Starting again with external targets and with the customers, business stakeholders, product managers, POs, BAs. The goal is to keep being aligned on the detailed vision, on the requirements, and continue building the backlog. The things that may go wrong here is new unpredicted requirements, complex requirements, too huge or too small requirements. So what you can do is to make suggestions, to explain, to demo, and if you have any problems, involve your project management. You shouldn't argue yourself. You have specific people whose job is to make sure that things are aligned process-wise on the project. Speaking about external project management, the goal is again to keep being aligned on the delivery, on the project execution, and you can get misaligned, you can get to some oversimplification, misplanning, or over-reliability. So what you have to do is to keep strong positions on how the team works and its capacity, priorities, and the processes. Explain your visions with right examples, give right expectations, highlighting risks. You have to have RACI matrix, and don't hesitate to defer to it and to remind about it when you are asked for certain things and certain decisions. And if you see something undoable, push back in advance, because then you may not have time. If you see that something is not doable, discuss it with your project management and then come together with them to the external project management. The earlier you do it, the less problems you'll have in the future. Speaking about technical folks, architects from the customer side, The goal here is to keep explaining and confirming your architecture, and potential difficulty is that they can question certain points that were already discussed. You can have misunderstanding or non-understanding that is hidden and is not obvious. Oversimplification, and one more usual thing is no clear or full understanding of business requirements from the customer's architects. This is, as I said, very usual, that they are not part of a lot of requirements groomings and meeting their own business process owners. So you have to explain certain things to them, and you should not assume that they know what you know, unfortunately. So the best you can do here is to confirm understanding and perception of requirements and architecture always, and at almost any meeting. You need to keep capturing the decisions and don't hesitate to point to the decisions taken earlier. That's why you want to have them captured all the time. Explain and give examples. And if you see that they come up with some architectures, give them an ability to go with it. Allow them to POC the solutions. If it's needed, include PMO to assign certain capacity to do it. And don't argue right away. Then give a chance and then have strong arguments to propose alternatives if the proposed solution doesn't work out. There are also other external targets during development phase. If the project has developers from the customer side, you may have to explain the architecture and give technical tasks to external developers. The problem is that they may not have full understanding of requirements and architecture, especially if the project hierarchy is broken, if they don't have right dev leads, for example. And what you can do here is, first you need to make sure that developers work directly with product owners or BAs, that you are not the only connecting point between business and developers, that you are part of this triangle. And second, the more you document the architecture with all the details, the easier the communication with the external developers goes. So you should review the architecture and approaches, but if the project is of medium or large size, make sure that you have some super users, dev leads on the external dev side, so that you don't get too much into details and explaining obvious things to external developers. And another group here is integrated system developers from external parties, where you need to align on the integrations. And there may be a lot of problems here. This is one of the most troublesome groups, because they may not have full understanding of your requirements and your architecture. The deadlines may be unclear, the responsibilities may be very unclear, the escalation part may be unclear, task management. You need them to do something, but you don't know what to do if they don't do it on time. So you may face slow responses and delays of any kind. So first, there are a bunch of things to remediate here. You need to make external developers work with product owners directly and understand the requirements. You need to make sure that the architectures are documented and reviewed. Clear responsibilities has to be defined with deadlines and escalations, so involve project management with integrated system developers like almost any time. And as I already mentioned, war rooms is a must for integration related topics, because going without war rooms where you don't finish your call before you resolve all the problems and really have the data going back and forth. You will spend a lot of time for integrations. Speaking about internal targets for in-depth phase. For project management, internal tech teams, everything will be pretty much the same as I already discussed for design phase. Again, the idea is to keep aligned, and the more you communicate and the more trust you build, the more knowledge you share, the better you will be. One more group that is showing up in this phase that I wanted to discuss specifically is QAs. You have to communicate with QAs to align on the completed stories, completed requirements, and how to test them. What can potentially go wrong here? You may not be aligned, there may be misunderstanding of requirements and processes, and there may be no basic understanding of the platform or the cloud overall by the QA team. So, in a lot of cases, the problem is that QAs do not talk to product owners or BAs. They directly go to developers and architects to figure out things, though they need to understand the basics. They need to understand why, what are the requirements. So make sure this bridge exists. In some cases, you have to educate them on Salesforce, so make sure that they are educated, or there is some program to ensure that QA team is familiar with the product or the platform they're working with. And explain the core things, data model, personas in advance. And ideally, some testing lead super user is very helpful, who will be more like on the BA side or BA testing side, and can talk with low-level QAs rather than you spend time on this. Speaking about formats and the tips for the formats for in-depth communication. For the meetings, requirement groomings are more or less the same as they were on the design phase. For demos and POCs, again, be prepared, follow the scenario. Another type of meetings that shows up during the development is potential escalations and escalation calls. Here, what you have to do is to keep calm all the time. And slowly and thoroughly explain the architecture and why something was not considered. The more you had documented in advance, the better. So don't hesitate to gently remind about certain risks and assumptions that were highlighted previously. Another type of the meeting is bugs troubleshootings, and that's where you need to look at the full picture and to remember that you probably have more knowledge than other folks who try to resolve certain bugs. So try to look from another side, look from the high level, and that will help you to resolve something that was not resolved on the lower levels. And speaking about some detailed architecture discussions, primarily with your dev leads or architects, this is my favorite type of the meetings, and that's where you really learn a lot. So be ready to hear something that you didn't think about before. These kind of meetings are always source of new challenges. And the most problematic here, talking with nice, smart folks, is to keep on the topic, not to get too deep into the details or start discussing your previous experience or how you did same on other projects. So try to keep on the topic, though sometimes going a little bit wider outside may really help to come up with better solution. Email-wise, For the alignment emails, make sure that the decisions are documented and avoid huge emails here. You better have nice and huge documents rather than huge emails. For the planning emails, keep being in the loop. For the escalation emails, I believe these are the largest and the most detailed emails overall. For all the explanations and root cause analysis that you give in this kind of escalation responses, try to be very well structured and readable, and keep your audience in mind. In some cases, you better prepare a slide deck rather than create a multi-page escalation email reply. And there may be some regular emails like meeting notes. Here, though they can come up after every call, don't dismiss reviewing it, at least briefly, and to make sure that your key points and other key points are really well captured. It may save time. Speaking about instant messaging, it may be some alignments, confirmations, small QAs. Just be cautious here. Don't make undocumented decisions during IM communications. It is often a problem to figure out why certain decisions were made. And have certain rule for switching from IM, because IM is something very distracting and time-consuming. So have certain rule for IM. For example, if you have more than 10 or 15 messages each, schedule a call. Otherwise, it will be an infinite set of messages to read and reread without given structure. And there may be some other in-document communications. So here, just keep in mind to fill these documents and make them available as early as possible, and always update them, keep up to date. And if you need other people's inputs and approvals and reviews, tag them, make sure that they acknowledge that they have certain action items in the documents. Last but not least, keeping in mind during dev communications. First, again, architects may be taking too much into delivery and project management. Make sure you understand your key goals and objectives as an architect. Second, always check with the team what's going on. You have to trust your team, but at the same time, everyone makes mistakes. So try to spend, if you have a free minute, get into the system, get into the metadata, get into the code, because there are a lot of misalignments and misunderstandings even for perfect communicators. So the more you see and check on what's going on, you demo to yourself, you ask someone to demo to you, the better the result is. And key thing is really you have to be aligned with everyone. Then and only then the business vision will drive to your solution, will drive to ultimate result. And a couple of final takeaways for this presentation. Keep in mind that your situations are not unique, that there were multiple projects within your company or outside of your company. So someone has probably had same problems in terms of communications as you had, and they were resolved. Know these potential problems, be one step forward, and be ready to solve them. Then the solution will come easier and you won't be surprised and shocked. Think about communication strategies as kind of sub-project and try to systemize communications in your mind as an architect so that you can suggest communication improvements to make interactions more efficient and effective. Just be mindful every time if there is a certain meeting that does make sense, propose to skip it. If you're expected to write emails and then same thing shows up in certain documents, it does make sense to duplicate efforts. Try to optimize your processes and your work. And last but not least, keep in mind personal and cultural difference. Keep in mind that all the people are in their own mood, have their own problems, have their own background and cultural experience. So acknowledging it will help you to keep your goal in front of you and to communicate the best way and ultimately get to the best results with your projects and with your products. Thank you very much. Any questions? Appreciated. Happy to answer.